You may think you're doing the right thing, but from where I'm sitting, you're just noise, and we don't pay for noise.
The words hit hard, but not because they were cruel, because somewhere deep down, I knew this moment had been building since day one. The first time I stepped through the revolving glass doors of Horizon Vale Capital, I could feel the building size me up, cold, tall, polished like it knew I didn't belong. The security guard barely looked up as I scanned my badge for the first time. That was 6 months ago, and he still hasn't learnt my name. But that's all right. I wasn't there to be remembered. I was there to observe. People say officers are like families. That's a lie. They're more like ecosystems. You've got your predators, your prey, your camouflage experts, and the ones who just tread water. I treaded, quietly, consistently. I didn't wear the 4-inch heels or the blazers with power shoulders. I wore cardigans, sensible flats, and carried a neutral-colored laptop bag I bought secondhand from a local teacher who'd just retired. Maybe that's why no one took me seriously. At Horizon Vale, looking young meant looking green, looking thoughtful meant looking slow, and not being loud meant not being noticed. But being unnoticed had its advantages. I was in operations, junior analyst, which meant I handled the back-end grunt work no one else wanted. Most days I sat near the copier, headphones in but music off just to listen, conversations in the kitchen, side comments in meeting rooms, the occasional slipped phrase when people thought I wasn't paying attention. I took it all in, not because I was planning anything, at least not yet. I just didn't like being blindsided. My first real project was auditing Q3 expense allocations for internal operations, a glorified spreadsheet crawl with numbers that bounced between accounts like gym balls in a kid's play zone. Boring, but oddly satisfying. I liked patterns. Patterns were honest. When I found one that didn't make sense, it didn't scare me, it intrigued me. Project Sequoia. 3 entries, line items labeled vendor travel services, totaling just over 23,000. Nothing in the log showed actual travel, no client site visits, no conferences, no hotel bookings, just a name I didn't recognize, and a vendor code that linked back to an event catering group that hadn't been used since Q1. I highlighted it, added a comment in the margin, and showed it to Liam. Liam was 2 years older than me, wore fleece vests over button-downs, and spent most days trying to guess who'd be laid off next. He looked at my screen, squinted, and gave a half laugh. "Delaney, you're sweet, but no one's going to thank you for playing accountant detective." "I'm not trying to be a detective," I said, "just accurate." He leaned in, lowered his voice. "This stuff happens all the time. Slush funds, off-the-book favors. It's above our pay grade." I nodded, and saved a local backup. That Friday, we had our weekly sync, just 6 of us around the oval table in 3A. It was cold in that room, always a degree or 2 below comfort. I sat on the far end, across from Liam, next to a potted plant that had been dead longer than I'd been hired. Cameron walked in 10 minutes late, as always, balancing a coffee and the smugness of a man who never got questioned. He didn't look up when he asked. "Everything's clean this week." Everyone murmured agreement. I cleared my throat. "There's something I need to flag on the Q3 Sequoia entries. 3 vendor payments totaling." He cut me off with a look. "Delaney, this is just the pre-report. We'll look at those later. The ledger doesn't match," I said quietly. "Vendor ID 1432C is linked to." "Thanks. Let's move on." I glanced around. No one met my eyes. Liam stared at the table. A manager I didn't know well suddenly found her pen very interesting. Cameron wrapped the meeting early, clapped his hands once, and left with his coffee half full. By 11:07, I got the calendar invite. Office touch base, 11:15, CR's office. When I entered, the blinds were already drawn. The room was dim, and the faint scent of burnt coffee lingered. Cameron was leaning back in his chair like he owned the world, which, in that room, he did. "Sit," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. "You've got initiative." "That's not always a good thing here." I said nothing. "You embarrassed me in front of the team." "I shared a factual concern," I replied. "You undermined leadership." I followed procedure. His jaw tightened. "You're new. You don't know how things work yet. Horizon Vale values loyalty and cohesion. I thought we valued accuracy." He stood up and walked to the window, pulling the blind cord halfway, just enough to let in a slice of light. His back was to me when he said, "Don't be a problem." "Delaney." I stood too. My knees trembled, but my voice didn't. Doing my job isn't being a problem, but ignoring something like this is a bigger one. He turned, his smile thin and tired. "Get back to your desk." I walked out of his office, feeling small, but I'd just started paying attention. Silence in corporate spaces has its own flavor, sterile, rehearsed, and often more dangerous than shouting. I'd always thought the loudest moments would be the hardest to bear. But no, the silence after someone does something shameful and no one calls it out. That's the silence that tightens your chest. That's the silence I carried with me all weekend. After Friday's meeting, I didn't talk to anyone, not even my mother, and she usually called on Sundays like clockwork. Instead, I swept the floors twice, reorganized my spice rack, sat with a cup of tea that went cold 3 times before I poured it out. And every time I blinked, I saw Cameron's smug face across that table. I replayed the way Liam kept his eyes down, how no one said anything, how I walked out alone. Monday came cold and grey. The trees outside Horizon Vale were halfway bare, leaves crunching beneath the shoes of people who walked faster than they looked. I stood outside the building's front entrance longer than I needed to. I wasn't afraid, I was angry. Angry at the part of me that still hoped anyone, had said something after I left. They hadn't. The receptionist didn't greet me. Liam offered coffee I didn't take. And Clara, the woman from payroll who always complimented my cardigans, looked down at her phone when we passed in the hallway. By 10:30, we were upstairs for the quarterly financial review. A bigger room, more faces. I sat closer to the far window, where the glass fogged slightly from the temperature difference. Cameron opened the meeting with his usual self-importance, gesturing to slides as if he'd created the data with his bare hands. Behind him, the screen flicked through figures, familiar ones, especially the ones I'd flagged. I waited. He spoke of streamlining operations, optimizing expense flows, and my favorite, a culture of transparency. I looked down, then up. My heart wasn't racing this time. It was steady. My fingers tapped once against the table. Then I raised my hand. A few heads turned. A few stayed purposefully still. Cameron paused. "Yes, Delaney," he said, with the smirk of a man, certain he could outmaneuver anything. I spoke evenly. "There's a discrepancy in Project Sequoia's travel expenditures. Vendor ID 1432C appears again. No travel logs, no documentation. This vendor was already flagged in Q1. A hush, the kind that falls not from shock but discomfort." Cameron shrugged. "We've reviewed that already. It's handled. With respect," I continued. "The ledger contradicts that. And the project lead's calendar doesn't reflect any related activity. There's no paper trail." He exhaled loudly, visibly annoyed now. "This isn't a courtroom. I didn't think it needed to be," I replied. There was the sound of a chair shifting. Someone coughed. Another VP scribbled something without looking up. I knew that move, pretend to be busy so you didn't have to engage. "I'm just ensuring accuracy." I added. "Thank you," he said curtly. "Let's move on." And just like that, the moment was over. Except it wasn't. When the meeting ended, people scattered quickly, like someone had spilled something toxic. I walked toward the exit. Liam caught up with me, walking half a step behind. "Hey," he said. "You okay?" "I'm fine." That, in there. That took guts. I looked at him. "Did it?" He said nothing. I took the stairs down to the second floor, then turned right into the women's restroom. It was empty, as I'd hoped. I needed the mirror to remind myself I still looked human. My reflection stared back at me, calm, composed, maybe a little pale. I cupped water in my hands and pressed it against my neck. The door creaked open behind me. I turned. Cameron stood in the doorway. Wrong room, I thought, but he didn't leave. Instead, he stepped inside, closed the door behind him. He moved closer. I instinctively backed up until I was near the paper towel dispenser. "You enjoy these moments, don't you?" he said. "Little displays. Trying to prove something." I said nothing. "You think you're changing things. You're not. You're a blip. A nobody." "Still," I said nothing. "You should know your place. Delaney." And then, without warning, he stepped to the sink, filled a paper cup with cold water, turned and threw it in my face. My breath caught. The water hit hard, not physically, but symbolically. The audacity, the arrogance, the absolute belief that I couldn't do anything about it. He turned and walked out. He didn't look back. I stood there, water dripping from my chin, shirt soaked, my hands clenched into fists against the counter, not shaking with fear, with purpose. I dried my face with slow, deliberate movements. My skin felt like ice. But inside, something had cracked open. Something old. Something I'd buried in the name of professionalism. Enough. I walked back to my desk in silence. No one looked up. Liam stared hard at his monitor. Clara avoided me again. The message had spread. Delaney had crossed a line. And lines, in corporate culture, matter more than truth. By 3:00 May, I received an HR email. Notice of scheduled review. November 2nd. Subject, alignment and behavior. I didn't click it. Instead, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a flash drive. My own, not company issued. On it was a folder labeled Safeguards. I'd created it years ago during college, updated it when my mother filed her complaint against St. Mary's Medical. It contained templates, case notes, recordings, the kind of materials you save just in case. I remembered what she told me, voice low but fierce after she won her case. Justice doesn't scream. It documents, it waits, and then it walks into the room with proofs. So I waited for the elevator to empty. Then I took it to the basement print room. No one ever checked there. I opened a blank document on a spare terminal. Title: Chronology of Misconduct. Horizon Veil. I typed for hours. Vendor codes. Dates. Conversations. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I went home and opened a folder I hoped I'd never need. The rain had started just as I stepped outside Horizon Veil that Monday night. A slow, insistent drizzle that coated the sidewalks and turned every streetlight halo into a blurred shimmer. I didn't run. I didn't open my umbrella. I just walked my blouse still damp from the water Cameron had thrown. My mind sharp with the kind of clarity only injustice can bring. Home was a 3-flight walk-up in a pre-war building just off Broad Street. The heater hissed when I opened the door, and the familiar scent of eucalyptus from the diffuser I barely used filled the air. I kicked off my shoes, peeled off my jacket, and sat at my tiny kitchen table with the lights off. That folder labeled Safeguards wasn't something I kept out of paranoia. It was preparation, a legacy from my mother. After her whistleblower case, she'd shown me how to track chain-of-command emails, how to cross-reference timestamps, how to follow the paper trails. No one once followed. I never thought I'd need it. I wasn't trying to be brave. I was trying to survive. I plugged in the flash drive and opened a new document. Chronology of Misconduct. Horizon Veil Capital. The cursor blinked. Patient. I started typing. October 3rd, 2023. Assigned Q3 reconciliation. Discovered discrepancies in Sequoia expenses. October 6th. Alerted teammate Liam. No follow-up. October 9th. Raised issue in sub-team meeting. Manager dismissed concern. October 13th. Publicly raised same discrepancy in leadership meeting. Manager responded dismissively. October 13th. 11:53. Private confrontation in women's restroom. Manager Cameron Rhodes threw water in my face. I paused, breathing shallowly. That last line, seeing it written, made it real in a different way. Documentation is like that. It doesn't just hold truth, it preserves it. I added a second section. Potential witnesses. Liam Flores witnessed original spreadsheet findings. Clara Halverson, payroll staff, has expressed discomfort privately. VP Terrence Michaels, present during Q3 financial meeting. Restroom incident. No direct witnesses. Camera coverage unclear. My phone buzzed. A text from Liam. You okay? I didn't answer. I wasn't mad at him. Not really. I knew what fear looked like. But fear and silence weren't excuses anymore. I closed the document, encrypted the folder, and emailed it to myself and to a backup Gmail I hadn't used since grad school. Then I scrolled through my contacts and found the number I hadn't dialed in 4 years. Naomi Wexler, attorney at law, labor rights, whistleblower defense. I first met Naomi when I was 19, sitting outside the hearing room where my mom testified. Naomi had offered me a granola bar and told me I looked like a person who took in more than she let on. She wasn't wrong. I hit call. 3 rings. Wexler. Naomi. It's Delaney Moore. A pause. Then, I remember you. Is your mother okay? She's fine. I'm not. I need to ask you something. Strictly confidential. Her voice changed softer, but precise. Go ahead. I told her everything. The expense report, the pushback, the water, every detail. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was silence only this time. It wasn't heavy. It was deliberate. Delaney, she said, what they've done is both ethically and legally questionable, but it needs proof. Paper, records, emails, screenshots, timestamps. You think you can get me those? I already started, I said. I have 4 PDF logs, 2 screenshots, 1 spreadsheet, and a running timeline. She chuckled. Good girl. You're your mother's daughter. I'm trying. I'll draw up representation paperwork. You won't need to say a word without me present. But Delaney, this isn't just a complaint. If we do this, it's a case. I know. You sure? I wasn't until the cup hit my face. Another pause. I'll email you encrypted forms tonight. Use your personal device. Nothing from the office. Understood. We ended the call. I sat still for a long time, the weight of resolve settling in. The next morning, I arrived 15 minutes early. I wore all black, not for mourning, just for quiet. I passed the receptionist, ignored Liam's hesitant smile, and went straight to my desk. Clara walked past with a stack of files. She paused, glanced around, then, without speaking, slipped a folded piece of paper onto my desk and kept walking. I opened it, signed by C. Ra. On September 15, Sequoia A. Expenses, vendor shift due to campaign hush. Thought you might want this. C. It was a copy of a form, not in the official system, but signed, dated, and clear. I scanned it, saved it, added it to the chronology file. At lunch, I didn't eat. I went to the copy room on the 5th floor, no cameras there. I printed a clean, compiled version of everything I had: names, dates, documents. Then I slipped it into an envelope labeled "to legal." I left it in the confidential Dropbox used for vendor compliance. No one saw me, or so I thought. As I walked back to my desk, I noticed something on the floor, a sticky note. "They're watching. Be careful. T." I didn't know who T was, but it didn't matter. By that afternoon, my system access was slower. My badge wouldn't open the side stairwell anymore. HR rescheduled my review due to availability. The walls were moving, quietly, strategically, but so was I. I spent the next evening backing up everything twice. I created cloud storage with Naomi's legal email attached. I logged each detail because I knew what came next. This wouldn't end with an apology. It would end in a room closed, cold, with people who thought they could control the outcome. They were wrong. This time, I wasn't walking into a meeting alone. It was still dark when I left my apartment Tuesday morning. The street lamps were casting long shadows across the sidewalk, and the early autumn wind had taken on a sharper edge. I wore a long charcoal coat that brushed my knees and carried a small black bag, not my usual canvas tote. Today wasn't about routine. Today was about precision. I had been rehearsing the walk into Horizonvale all night, not the strut of someone trying to win, but the posture of someone who had already prepared for the endgame. No fury, no fire, just facts, one after another, stacked like dominoes, waiting to fall. The receptionist didn't ask where I was going. She didn't make eye contact. The meeting was scheduled for 8:30 a.m. Mall, an urgent leadership strategy sync. It wasn't on the regular calendar. It hadn't been announced to the floor, but the subject line in the invite said it all. Internal alignment, compliance review and strategic response, which was corporate code for, "We're panicking, but we'll pretend not to." I took the elevator to the lower conference level, where most executive sessions happened, and waited just outside room 2F. Heart steady, palms dry. Naomi arrived precisely at 8:28. She wore a tailored grey suit and carried a thin briefcase. Her expression was calm, but her eyes scanned the hallway like a chess player counting moves. "You ready?" she asked. "More than ever," I said. She nodded once, and we entered together. The room had a rectangular table, black leather chairs, and a glass wall that faced a hallway with a blurred privacy film at chest height. 3 people were already seated. Cameron, of course, looking self-important and trying to look relaxed. Ellen from HR, who avoided eye contact with both of us, and a man I didn't know older, in a blue tie, sharp eyes likely corporate legal. Cameron's smile was thin. "Mrs. Moore," and guest. Naomi didn't blink. "Naomi Wexler, legal counsel for Ms. Moore. This is an official meeting." "Yes." The man in the blue tie cleared his throat. "Stephen Krell, general counsel." "Yes." "This is being recorded and documented." "Good," Naomi said, placing a folder on the table. "Ms. Moore," Ellen began, "we understand there have been concerns expressed regarding conduct, but also there have been some behavioral flags raised in your department. Before we proceed, would you like to clarify your intentions today?" I leaned forward, voice steady. "I'm here to submit formal documentation of misconduct, financial and professional, under internal and federal whistleblower protections. Everything I state is verifiable and supported by dated records, signed approvals, and witness statements." Cameron scoffed. "This is absurd. She's been here, 6 months? You're going to listen to this over a decade of service." Naomi opened the folder. "We're not here to compare tenure. We're here to discuss these." She began sliding printed pages across the table. Expense ledgers, email chains, screenshots of Cameron's authorizations, Clara's note, Liam's email trail, even a screenshot of the security camera log showing Cameron entering the women's restroom just minutes before my login after the incident. Stephen picked up a page, read slowly, then passed it to Ellen. "You went digging," Cameron muttered. "This is a witch hunt." "No," I said. "It's an audit, and I wasn't the one who started it. I was the one who wouldn't ignore it." "You're risking your career over this," he said. Naomi smiled politely. "She's safeguarding it." There was a long pause, the kind where power shifts, and everyone feels it but pretends not to. Stephen finally looked at Cameron. "Mr. Rhodes, can you explain these expense inconsistencies? And this unauthorized vendor code?" Cameron's face flushed. It was an internal pivot. "We consolidated services. These kinds of reallocations happen all the time." "There was no intent to conceal," Naomi asked. He shut his mouth. Stephen turned to Ellen. "We'll need an internal audit. Immediately." and freeze access to these vendor accounts. Ellen nodded, scribbling. Cameron looked at me, the mask slipping. There was fear now, and anger, not the usual sharp edge, but the kind that comes from realizing you've been outplayed by someone you thought was invisible. I didn't look away. Naomi leaned back slightly. Also, Mrs. Moore has experienced a physical and verbal incident we consider retaliatory. She has the right to pursue that through legal channels. Cameron laughed bitterly. There's no proof of that. Naomi raised a brow. We have a signed affidavit from Clara Halverson stating she witnessed your exit, saw Ms. Moore's condition, and was approached by you shortly after. There's also the office maintenance log, which notes water cleanup from the restroom that morning. We will request footage. Silence again, this time thicker. Stephen folded his hands. We'll be placing Mr. Rhodes on temporary leave pending review. Cameron stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're letting her. Sit down, Stephen said flatly. He did. Naomi and I stood. We'll await confirmation of next steps via email, she said. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just walked out the way I came in, calm, quiet, eyes forward. Outside, the hallway felt brighter. As we reached the elevator, I felt Naomi's hand rest gently on my shoulder. You did good. I nodded. It's not over. No, she agreed. But the room heard you. And just like that, the woman who'd once been overlooked for speaking up was now the woman no one could ignore. Cameron didn't say a word. For once, he had nothing to say. There's always someone who thinks deleting an email makes it disappear. Tuesday evening, I sat alone at my kitchen table, tea gone cold beside me, staring at my laptop. Naomi had shared a new folder from her secure server, Horizon Veil Legal Phase. Inside were scanned documents, timeline notes, and one new file labeled Backup Threads from Internal Source. I clicked. It was from Liam. Not directly to me, he'd used Naomi's secure intake form, but I recognized his careful writing. Short, hesitant, clear. I've seen Cameron delete threads. He CC's finance, then scrubs the shared folder. But it keeps logs. I'll print them. I don't want anyone else getting hurt. It was the line that got me. Liam, the quietest in the room, finally stepping forward. The next morning, he came to my desk, said nothing, slipped a yellow envelope beneath a folder and walked off. Inside, 6 pages of emails, vendor transfers, finance overrides, 2 midnight messages from Cameron telling someone to scrub inactive accounts, that someone hadn't obeyed. They'd archived. I added them to the existing file and sent everything to Naomi. Minutes later, my office phone rang. I didn't answer. The voicemail transcript said it all. Miss Moore, this is Stephen Krell. Please meet us in conference room 1C at 1:00 p.m. At the meeting, Naomi was already seated. So were Ellen from HR, Stephen, and 2 new faces, legal and IT audit. Miss Moore, Stephen began, the material you submitted confirms an attempt to remove financial records. Combined with the testimony from Mrs. Halverson, we are escalating this to a formal investigation. What happens now? I asked. Mr. Rhodes has been suspended without pay pending termination. There will be a full compliance review, and we'd like your help. Naomi leaned forward. In what capacity? We'd like to bring Mrs. Moore on as an internal ethics liaison during the audit. Quietly. For now, Naomi glanced at me. I didn't respond right away. Then she said, put it in writing. She'll consider. As we stood to leave, Stephen slid a note across the table. Handwritten. Just 1 sentence. They're watching. Be careful. Naomi frowned. Where did this come from? Shred bin near your floor, Stephen replied. Found by janitorial staff. My spine chilled slightly. I nodded and walked out with Naomi, the weight of everything sinking in again. That night, I stayed in the office long after everyone had left. The place felt abandoned, just me, the low hum of lights, and my thoughts. I passed Cameron's office. His nameplate was gone. His desk had been scrubbed clean, too clean. I stepped inside. Just for a moment, a single pen lay under the credenza. On the inside of a drawer, taped, was a sticky note. Clara knows more than she says. Ask about decade. I took a photo. Back at my desk, I searched. December 8th, last year. No official record of the vendor summit Cameron had claimed in his Q4 report. Another lie. Another thread to pull. I didn't tell Naomi yet. I needed to be sure. Just before 10 p.m. I returned home. As I reached my stoop, Mrs. Dorsey, my neighbor, peeked from her window. Delaney, she whispered. A man was here earlier. He didn't knock, just stood there, then left. What did he look like? Suit. Nervous. I smiled faintly. Thank you. Inside, I double-locked the door, backed up my files, then sent Naomi 1 line. We're not done. There's more. I didn't even need to write a subject line. The file said everything. The new badge felt different. Maybe it was the weight, or the fact that it was printed with a new title: Ethics and Integrity Consultant, Internal Oversight Division. But mostly, it was because I didn't need to scan it twice anymore. The system knew me, the building accepted me, and for the first time since I joined Horizon Vale, I wasn't walking in hoping to be overlooked. I was walking in knowing I belonged. It had been 10 days since the internal audit began, 10 days since Cameron Rhodes vanished from the 13th floor, escorted out with a cardboard box and an expression he couldn't quite arrange into dignity. In those 10 days, I had sat in on 5 compliance meetings, helped rewrite 2 internal reporting protocols, and fielded 3 confidential submissions from employees too scared to speak before. I didn't wear suits, I didn't raise my voice, I just listened and documented and asked the questions no one wanted to hear. Tuesday morning, I arrived early. I always did now. The elevator dinged softly as I stepped onto the 8th floor. This used to be the quiet floor where people got sent when they were being nudged out. But this week, it had become my floor, my workspace. The conference room at the end of the hall was now labeled Internal Review Suite, and the glass walls had been frosted with the words, "Accountability starts inside." Naomi met me there just after 8:30. She had agreed to stay on as external counsel for the duration of the audit. The board had extended her retainer before I even asked. Her presence brought credibility and, in my case, something close to mentorship. "They approved the pilot proposal," she said, handing me a copy. I scanned the top line. "Horizon Vale Ethics and Culture Task Force, Q1 launch. You're in charge," she added. I nodded. "Good." Naomi studied me. "How do you feel? Like the work's just beginning?" I said. We moved to the large whiteboard on the far wall, where I'd started mapping a feedback system. Anonymous, secure, with escalation tiers that didn't loop back into the departments being reported. A simple design, but effective. As I worked, someone knocked lightly on the glass. "Clara." She stepped in slowly, holding a manila folder. "I thought you'd want to see this," she said, handing it to me. "It's from last December. Vendor contracts. The ones no one could find." I flipped through them. December 8th. Fake catering invoices. Matching signatures. My breath caught. "You kept these?" I asked. "I kept copies," she said. It never felt right. I looked at her, really looked at her. "Thank you," she nodded. It's easier to speak when someone else speaks first. After she left, Naomi leaned against the table. "You just opened a door for a lot of people. You know, I didn't kick it down," I said. "No," she smiled. "You built a better one." Around noon, I took the elevator to the 12th floor. I hadn't been up here since before the hearing. Cameron's old office was empty now, the walls bare, the glass cleaned, his name plaque gone. In its place, a framed quote had been hung, simple black text on white. "Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy." I didn't put it there. I asked Ellen from HR if it was her doing. She shook her head. "I think it was Stephen," she said. "He said it was the most powerful line from the debrief notes." I stood for a moment in front of the door. I didn't want the office. I didn't need the title. I had the key. That afternoon, I received an envelope in my inbox marked internal only. No return address. Inside was a printout of a company-wide survey. 93% of respondents said they now felt they had a safe place to speak up. There was no signature, just a sticky note. "Keep walking through. T." I still didn't know who T was. Maybe I never would. But I smiled. That evening, as I packed up, Liam knocked softly on the doorframe. "Hey," he said. "Hey, I just wanted to say, thanks for not making people like me the enemy." "You weren't," I said. "You were scared." "We all were." He nodded, eyes glancing toward the whiteboard behind me. "You think this'll stick?" I thought about that. "It will," I said, "not because they want it to, because now they have to." He laughed once, quietly. "It's nice seeing someone win without burning the place down." "I didn't want to win," I said. "I wanted to fix what should have never been broken." He left with a quiet nod. As the sun dipped below the city skyline, and the light through the frosted glass turned amber, I packed up my things and locked the door to the review room. For the first time in months, I didn't take the elevator straight down. I went up to the rooftop terrace. It was closed to most staff now, under renovation, but the security guard smiled and waved me through. The air was crisp, clean, above the noise. I leaned against the railing, watching Newark's lights blink to life. I thought of the girl who first walked into Horizon Vale. Quiet, underestimated, invisible. She hadn't changed. But now, they saw her, and just like that, I realized I wasn't the only one watching anymore. Sometimes, strength isn't loud, it's calm, consistent, and unshakable. Delaney didn't fight with fists or fury. She fought with facts, integrity, and patience. This story reminds us that justice doesn't always roar, it walks in. Documented and undeniable, never underestimate the quiet ones in the room, the ones who observe, who listen, who remember, because when the moment comes, they won't just speak, they'll transform the system. Speak up, even when your voice shakes. And when you're handed a key instead of a megaphone, use it to open the right door, not kick it down. Real power doesn't seek attention. It creates accountability.